17 degrees outside, a pregnant woman crawling across a frozen garage floor, her silk nightgown offering nothing against the bitter cold. She begged for warmth, she begged for mercy, she begged for her unborn baby's life. But here is what she did not know. 43 miles away, her billionaire father sat in darkness, 12 monitors glowing before him, watching every moment of her suffering, and he did nothing. Why would a father watch his own daughter freeze? Why would he let her suffer when he had the power to save her? The answer will shock you. The truth will break your heart, and the ending will leave you breathless. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about a love so fierce, it had to wait in silence. A rescue so perfectly planned, it destroyed an entire family. Stay with me until the end. Trust me, you will not regret it. If stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. Drop a comment telling me what you think will happen, and share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible. Now let the story begin. Please, please, I'm so cold. The words scraped out of Meredith's throat like broken glass, her palm pressed against oil-stained concrete. The cold seeped through her silk nightgown, through her skin, into her bones. December 23rd, 17 degrees outside. The garage offered no protection from the bitter Connecticut winter. She was 8 months pregnant. Her belly hung heavy as she crawled toward the door that connected to the kitchen, the door that separated her from warmth, from safety, from the husband who had locked her out here. Garrett, she pounded weakly against the wood. Garrett, please, the baby. No answer. Through the small window in the door, she could see the kitchen light, bright, warm, mocking her. The light clicked off. Meredith's hand fell to her side. She pressed her forehead against the cold door. Her breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. She checked the door handle. Locked. She checked it again. Still locked. Once more, her fingers numb now. Still locked. The garage smelled of motor oil and dust. Somewhere a pipe creaked. The wind howled outside, finding every crack in the walls. Meredith turned and scanned the space. Garrett's Mercedes, Vivian's Lexus, garden tools hanging on the far wall, a workbench covered in boxes, no blankets, no phone, no way out. Her eyes landed on the water heater in the corner, the only source of warmth in this frozen tomb. She began to crawl toward it. 43 miles away, Douglas Callahan sat in darkness. 12 monitors glowed before him. Security feeds from locations across the country, corporate offices, server farms, research facilities. His empire of surveillance technology spread across the screens like a digital nervous system, but his eyes fixed on only one feed, the garage camera. Night vision. Crystal clear. His daughter, 8 months pregnant, crawling across a concrete floor in a silk nightgown. Douglas's hand hovered over his phone. His jaw clenched so tight the vein in his temple pulsed visibly. Marcus Webb stood 3 feet behind him, former Navy SEAL, head of Douglas's personal security for 15 years. The man had seen combat, had watched friends die, but he had never seen his boss look like this. Sir, Marcus's voice was steady, controlled. We have enough. Let me send the team. Douglas didn't move. On the screen, Meredith reached the water heater. She curled into a fetal position against its metal casing. Her arms wrapped around her pregnant belly. Not yet. The words cost Douglas everything. Marcus stepped forward. Sir, with respect, she's your daughter. She's pregnant. It's 17 degrees, sons. I know what it is, Douglas's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I know exactly what it is. He watched Meredith's lips move, talking to herself, or maybe to the baby. The audio feed picked up fragments. Stay with me. Please stay with me. Douglas closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, his face had hardened into stone. We need intent, he said. Criminal intent. The bathroom was neglect. He paused. This is them trying to harm the baby. But I need them to say it. I need it recorded. And if they don't say it, then I burn everything down. Douglas's voice dropped to a whisper. But if I go in now without proof, they'll call me the crazy billionaire. They'll call her unstable. They'll take that baby and bury everything in family court. He turned to look at Marcus. I've seen it happen. Rich family, expensive lawyers, sympathetic judge, the victim becomes the villain. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. On the monitor, Meredith's body shook with silent sobs. Douglas picked up his phone. Not to call for help. Not yet. He opened his contacts. Found the name he needed. Patricia Holbrook, family attorney. He typed a message. It's happening. Be ready. Then he set the phone down and watched his daughter suffer. The cold was a living thing now. It crawled inside Meredith, nested in her chest, wrapped around her heart. She pressed her back against the water heater. The metal was barely warm, enough to keep her alive. Maybe, for now. Her hands moved to her belly. Under the thin silk, she felt her daughter kick. I know, Meredith whispered. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. Another kick, stronger this time. But we're going to get through this. Mama's going to figure something out. She didn't believe her own words, but she said them anyway, because that's what mothers do. The garage door rattled in the wind. Meredith flinched. For one wild moment, she thought someone was coming. No one was coming. She thought about screaming, but the nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and Garrett had chosen this house specifically for its privacy. She understood that now. She understood so many things now. The cold made her thoughts slow and strange. Memories surfaced like bubbles in dark water. The first time she met Garrett, the charity gala, his shy smile, the way he'd asked about her work, not her father's money, the wedding, her father walking her down the aisle, his whispered words, the door's always open. Always. She'd smiled then, thought he was being paranoid. God, she'd been so stupid. The signs were all there. She just hadn't wanted to see them. Her phone. Where was her phone? Upstairs, on the nightstand, where Garrett had told her to leave it. You don't need it while you sleep, baby. The blue light is bad for the pregnancy. Everything he said had a reason, a logical explanation, a way to make her feel like the problem was her. Meredith pulled her knees up as far as her belly would allow. She tucked her hands under her arms. The shivering had become constant now, violent, uncontrollable. She thought about her mother, dead 16 years now. Cancer had taken her slowly, piece by piece. Mama, Meredith whispered into the darkness. Mama, I need help. The garage offered no answer, just the wind, just the cold, just the sound of her own ragged breathing. She closed her eyes and waited for morning. Douglas watched the timestamp on the monitor, 11:47 p.m. Meredith had been in the garage for 23 minutes. His secure laptop sat open beside him. Footage from the past 18 months played in a separate window. The archive he'd been building. The evidence. The first time Garrett raised his voice. Month 3 of the marriage. The first time Vivian criticized Meredith's cooking. Week 2. The slow isolation. The phone accidents. The car problems. The friends who stopped calling because their calls were never returned. Douglas had watched it all, recorded it all, documented every moment of his daughter's destruction, and done nothing. Because doing something meant revealing his surveillance. It meant lawsuits and privacy violations and restraining orders against him. It meant Garrett's lawyers painting him as the controlling father who couldn't let go. He'd seen that playbook before. He'd watched other wealthy families destroy each other in court while the real abusers walked free. So he waited. He gathered evidence. He built his case. And he watched his daughter disappear. Sir, Marcus's voice cut through his thoughts. Her lips are turning blue. Douglas looked at the monitor. Meredith's face had gone pale. Too pale, her shivering had slowed. That was bad. Shivering was the body fighting. When the shivering stopped, he picked up his phone again. How fast can we have a team there, he asked. 20 minutes. I've had them staged in Greenwich for a week. Medical? Private ambulance standing by. Dr. Reeves is on call. Douglas nodded. His finger hovered over the call button. On the monitor, a light turned on inside the house. The kitchen again. Douglas leaned forward. The door to the garage opened. Vivian Whitmore stood in the doorway. Silk robe. Pearl earrings even at midnight. She looked down at Meredith like she was examining a stain on the carpet. Oh, for heaven's sake, Vivian's voice came through clearly on the audio. You're being dramatic. Meredith's head lifted. Vivian, please, the baby, I need to come inside. You need to learn your place. Vivian crossed her arms. Garrett told me about the phone, the secret phone, after everything we've done for you. I just wanted to call my father, that's all. I just wanted to hear his voice. Your father, Vivian laughed. The sound was sharp, cold. Your father who thinks he's too good for our family? Who looked at my son like he was dirt? That's not, don't. Vivian's voice hardened. Don't you dare defend him. He's the reason you're like this, spoiled, ungrateful, thinking you can do whatever you want without consequences. Meredith struggled to sit up straighter. The effort cost her. I'm 8 months pregnant. I could lose the baby. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before you betrayed our trust. Douglas's hand tightened on the phone. He forced himself to keep listening. Vivian, please. Meredith's voice broke. I'm begging you. Good, Vivian smiled. That's a start. She turned and walked back into the house. The door closed, the lock clicked. The kitchen light went off. Douglas sat perfectly still for a long moment. Then he turned to Marcus. Get them on the ground. Now. Meredith didn't know how much time passed. Minutes, hours. The cold made everything blur together. She tried to stay awake. She knew that was important. Falling asleep in the cold was dangerous. But her eyelids were so heavy, and the water heater was almost warm, and she was so tired. She thought about her daughter, the little girl growing inside her. Eleanor. She'd already picked the name. Hadn't told Garrett yet. Eleanor, she whispered. Ellie, my sweet girl. The baby kicked weakly. Even she was getting tired. I'm sorry, Meredith's voice cracked. I'm so sorry I brought you into this. She should have known. She should have seen it coming. The phone call on their honeymoon. Garrett's voice, cold and calculating. Once she's pregnant, we have leverage. She'd heard it. She knew she'd heard it. But his eyes had been so warm when he turned around. His smile so sincere. And she'd wanted to believe. Needed to believe. Because the alternative was too terrible. I'm not crazy, Meredith whispered to the darkness. I know what I heard. But she'd let him convince her otherwise. Let him make her doubt her own memory, her own sanity, gaslighting. She'd learned the word later. Googled it in secret on a library computer. The results had made her sick. She wasn't crazy. She'd never been crazy. She'd just been married to a monster. The garage door rattled again. Meredith barely noticed anymore. The cold had taken too much from her. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. The last thing she heard before the darkness took her was the sound of helicopters in the distance. She thought she was dreaming. 18 months earlier, Meredith Callahan had been happy, or something close to it. She'd learned not to expect too much from happiness. Losing her mother at 12 had taught her that joy was temporary, fragile, easily shattered. But standing in the ballroom of the Hartford Grand, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars, she felt something like contentment. The charity gala was her father's world. Tech billionaires and hedge fund managers, politicians and celebrities, everyone who mattered and many who only thought they did. Meredith hated it. She always had. She'd rather be at her nonprofit, teaching art to underprivileged kids, watching their faces light up when they discovered they could create something beautiful. But her father had asked, and she could never say no to him. You look lost. The voice came from behind her, male, warm, a hint of humor. Meredith turned. The man standing there wasn't what she expected. Not flashy, not aggressively handsome, just pleasant, normal. He had kind eyes. That was the first thing she noticed. I'm not lost, she said. I am hiding. There's a difference. The man smiled. What are you hiding from? Conversations about stock portfolios and summer homes in the Hamptons. Meredith gestured at the crowd. Everyone here wants to talk about money, what they have, what they're getting, what they're spending. That sounds exhausting. It is. She took a sip of champagne. Sorry, I don't usually complain to strangers. I'm Garrett. He extended his hand. Now, we're not strangers. Meredith laughed. It surprised her. She didn't laugh at parties like this. Meredith, she said, shaking his hand. I know. Garrett's smile turned slightly embarrassed. I've been trying to work up the courage to talk to you for about an hour. Why? Because you look like the only real person in the room. Meredith felt her cheeks warm. Most people here want to know my last name before my first. I already know your last name. Garrett shrugged. Everyone does. I was more interested in whether you'd talk to me. Why wouldn't I? Because my family's money is what your family spends on office supplies. He said it without bitterness, just stating a fact. We're in shipping, freight containers, not exactly glamorous. I run a nonprofit teaching art to kids. Meredith smiled. Glamour isn't really my thing. They talked for 2 hours about her work, about his travels, about books they'd read and movies they'd loved. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Not once did he mention her father. Not once did he ask about the family business. When the gala ended, he asked for her number. Meredith gave it to him without hesitation. Walking to her car, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The courtship lasted 6 months. Garrett was patient, attentive, never pushing too fast. They went to museums, to quiet restaurants, to parks where they walked for hours talking about everything and nothing. He met her friends, charmed them effortlessly. I like him, Joanna said after their first double-date date. He's not what I expected. What did you expect? Another finance bro trying to get close to your dad. Joanna shrugged. But Garrett seems actually interested in you. He did. That was the thing. He really seemed to care about her work at the nonprofit, about her students, about the grief she still carried for her mother. Tell me about her, he'd said one night. 3 months in, sitting on his apartment couch, rain streaming down the windows. Meredith rarely talked about her mother. The loss was still too raw, even after all these years. But something about Garrett made her want to share. She was warm, Meredith said. That's what I remember most. She made everyone feel like they mattered. That sounds like you. I try. Meredith smiled sadly. She died when I was 12. Cancer. It was slow, painful, but she never complained. Not once, Osrishem. Garrett took her hand, didn't say anything, just held it. That was when Meredith realized she was falling in love. Meeting her father was inevitable and terrifying. Douglas Callahan didn't intimidate easily. He'd built a fortune from nothing, faced down corporate rivals and hostile regulators, survived 3 market crashes and a congressional investigation. But sitting across from Garrett at dinner, he looked like a father facing every father's worst fear. Tell me about your family, Douglas said. His tone was polite. His eyes were not. Garrett swallowed visibly. My father owns Whitmore Shipping, freight containers mostly, Pacific routes. I know the company. Douglas's voice gave nothing away. My parents divorced when I was young. My mother raised me. Garrett's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. She sacrificed a lot. I try to make her proud. And what are your intentions with my daughter? Dad, Meredith touched his arm. We've only been dating 6 months. I love her, sir. Garrett said it simply, directly. I know that might seem fast, but I do. Douglas studied him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Love is easy, Douglas said finally. Commitment is hard. Sacrifice is harder. Can you do those things? Yes, sir, I can. We'll see. The rest of dinner passed in awkward small talk. Garrett fumbled his words, knocked over a salt shaker. Nearly choked on his steak, Meredith took his hand under the table and squeezed. Afterward, walking to the car, Garrett let out a long breath. Your father terrifies me. He terrifies everyone, Meredith smiled. But he means well. He's just protective. After your mother? Yes, Meredith nodded. After her, he became both parents, sometimes too much of both. I'll win him over. Garrett opened her car door. Whatever it takes. Meredith believed him. The proposal came 3 months later, a rooftop in Manhattan, city lights spread out below them like scattered diamonds. Garrett got down on one knee. His hand shook as he opened the ring box. I'm not good at speeches, he said, so I'll just say this. You make me want to be better every day for the rest of my life. Meredith said yes before he finished the question. The engagement party followed. Then the wedding planning, dress fittings and venue tours, and endless decisions about flowers and food and guest lists. Through it all, Garrett deferred to her. Whatever she wanted, however she wanted it. "It's your day," he said. "I just want you happy." The prenup conversation came up once. Her father insisted. Meredith expected Garrett to be offended, to see it as an insult. Instead, he signed without hesitation. "I'm not marrying your money, sir," he told Douglas. "I'm marrying your daughter." Douglas said nothing, but something in his eyes softened slightly. The wedding was everything Meredith dreamed. Small, intimate, 50 guests in a garden overflowing with white roses. Her father walked her down the aisle, his arm steady, his face fighting emotion. "The door's always open," he whispered as they reached the altar. "Always." Meredith smiled. "I know, Dad, but I won't need it." She believed that too. Garrett waited at the altar in his gray suit, his eyes glistening with tears, his smile so full of love that Meredith's heart ached. "I do," she said when the moment came. "I do," Garrett echoed. The kiss sealed everything, the beginning of their life together. Vivian Whitmore embraced Meredith at the reception, air kisses on both cheeks. "Welcome to the family, dear." Vivian's smile was perfect. Her eyes were cold. "We're going to be so close." Meredith felt a chill, just for a moment, then dismissed it. Bridal nerves, nothing more. The honeymoon started perfectly. A suite in Bali, ocean views, private beach, 3 days of paradise, of laughter and love, and believing everything would be wonderful forever. Then came the fourth night. Meredith woke to an empty bed, the bathroom light off, the balcony empty. She found Garrett in the living room, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was different, cold, businesslike, nothing like the man she'd married. "The prenup's airtight, but it doesn't matter." He paused, listening. "Once she's pregnant, we have leverage. Her father won't let his grandchild grow up in scandal. We'll renegotiate everything." Meredith's hand flew to her mouth. Her heart stopped. No, she'd misheard. She must have misheard. Garrett turned, saw her standing in the doorway. His face cycled through emotions. Surprise, something calculating, then warmth. "Baby," he smiled, put down the phone. "You're up. I was just talking to my broker about our future." His voice was warm again, his eyes soft, the loving husband she'd married. Maybe she had misheard. The words hadn't been clear. The ocean waves were loud. Sleep had made her foggy. "Come back to bed," Garrett said. He crossed to her, took her hands. "You're shivering." She was. She hadn't noticed. "Who were you talking to?" she asked. "Just business. Nothing important." He kissed her forehead. "Come on, let's get you warm." She let him lead her back to the bedroom. Let him wrap his arms around her. Let his warmth drive away the cold. But sleep didn't come. She lay awake for hours, replaying the words she'd heard, or thought she'd heard. "I'm being paranoid," she whispered to herself. "Dad's paranoia is rubbing off on me." She wanted to believe that, needed to believe it, because the alternative was too terrible. Looking back, Meredith would mark that night as the beginning, the moment she started doubting herself. Garrett had planted the first seed, and over the next 18 months, he would water it carefully, tend it with patience, until Meredith no longer trusted her own mind, until she believed she was the problem, until she found herself crawling across a frozen garage floor, wondering how she'd gotten there. That was the night Meredith learned to doubt herself. And Garrett spent the next 18 months perfecting the lesson. The house in Connecticut was beautiful. Meredith had to admit that, a colonial mansion on 5 acres of manicured grounds, 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than her childhood home. "It's too much," she'd said when Garrett first showed her the listing. "It's an investment." He'd pulled her close. "Besides, think of the space for children." Children, the word had made her heart flutter. "But it's so far from the city. An hour from her nonprofit, 2 hours from her father. I'll never see anyone." "You'll see me," Garrett kissed her temple. "And my mother is nearby. She can't wait to have grandchildren. You'll have all the family you need." Meredith hesitated. Something felt wrong, but Garrett's logic was solid. The house was beautiful. The schools were excellent. The neighborhood was safe. And Vivian would be close by, a maternal figure to replace what Meredith had lost. "Okay," she'd said, "let's do it." 3 months later, she understood her mistake. Vivian came every day, sometimes twice. She had a key. Garrett had insisted on that. In case of emergencies. The emergencies seemed to be Meredith's cooking, her housekeeping, her appearance, her weight. You've put on a few pounds, dear. Vivian's eyes swept over Meredith's body. Garrett mentioned you've been eating a lot of carbs. I didn't realize he was keeping track. He worries about you. We all do. Vivian's smile was sugar-coated poison. I'm just trying to help you be the wife Garrett deserves. The criticism never stopped. The curtains were wrong. The garden was neglected. The bathroom wasn't clean enough. I'm just trying to help, Vivian said every time. You lost your mother so young. You never learned these things. Meredith started doubting herself. Maybe she was a bad housekeeper. Maybe she was gaining weight. Maybe she didn't know how to be a proper wife. Mom means well, Garrett said when Meredith tried to talk to him. She raised me alone after my father's indiscretions. She just wants us to succeed where my parents failed. She's cruel, Garrett. She says things that hurt me. You're being too sensitive. He pulled her close. She's from a different generation. Give her time. Meredith fell silent. Maybe she was being too sensitive. The isolation happened gradually. So slowly she didn't notice until it was complete. First, her car started having issues. Strange noises, warning lights. The mechanic couldn't find anything wrong, but Garrett insisted she use the driver instead. I can't have you stranded on some highway, he said, just until we get a new car. The new car never came. Then her phone accidentally broke, dropped in the bathtub, soaked beyond repair. Garrett bought her a new one, transferred only the contacts he approved. You don't need your old number, he said. This one is better, more secure. Her old friends started getting strange replies to their texts. Short, cold, not like Meredith at all. Because they weren't from Meredith, Garrett was answering for her. You don't need that stress, he said when she asked about it. Those people just want to gossip about your father's money. Joanna tried calling, left messages, sent emails. Meredith never received them. Douglas called the house. Garrett always answered. She's resting, sir. You know how delicate she's been. Garrett's voice was full of concern. But I'll tell her you called. He never did. Meredith's nonprofit work became too stressful for trying to conceive. She could volunteer from home instead. Remote, isolated, controlled. By month 6, Meredith realized she hadn't spoken to anyone outside the house in weeks. Her only company was Garrett and Vivian, the two people that slowly destroying her. She found Garrett's other phone by accident, a drawer she wasn't supposed to open, a device she wasn't supposed to see, a different contact list, different messages, a different life she knew nothing about. She didn't confront him, not then. She was too afraid. Instead, she started paying attention, watching, listening. The late-night calls he took in his office. The weekends he disappeared for business meetings. The way his voice changed when he thought she wasn't listening. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. Something was very, very wrong. The night she realized the full truth, she sat in the bathtub for 2 hours, fully clothed, water running cold around her, staring at the ceiling, the slow drip of the faucet marking time. Drip, drip, drip. She didn't cry. She'd forgotten how. Her hand moved to her stomach, not pregnant yet, but already she was disappearing. The woman she used to be, confident, vibrant, full of purpose, was gone. In her place was someone she didn't recognize. Someone timid, someone afraid, someone who apologized for existing. The panic cleaning had started by then, scrubbing counters at 2 a.m. because Vivian had mentioned a smudge, reorganizing closets at midnight because nothing was ever good enough. She'd become a ghost in her own life, a shadow of the person she once was, and no one knew. No one could see it, because Garrett had made sure of that. Douglas noticed something was wrong. He always noticed. His calls went unanswered. His texts got brief, generic replies. When he finally got Meredith on the phone, her voice sounded flat, rehearsed. Everything's fine, Dad. I'm just tired. She said it the same way every time, word for word, like reading from a script. Douglas hired a private investigator. 3 months of surveillance. Nothing concrete, Garrett was too careful. But the investigator's report noted something troubling. Meredith never left the property alone, never made phone calls without Garrett present, never met with friends or family. Classic isolation pattern, the investigator said, common in domestic abuse situations. Domestic abuse. The words hit Douglas like a physical blow. His daughter, his only child. The baby girl he'd raised alone after her mother died, being abused. Douglas wanted to charge in, to drag Garrett out of that house and beat him senseless. But he knew better. He'd seen cases like this before. Wealthy families, powerful lawyers, the abuser painting the victim as unstable, the father as controlling, the evidence buried under legal motions in sealed court records. If he was going to save his daughter, he needed to be smart. He needed proof, undeniable, overwhelming, the kind of proof that no lawyer could explain away. So he sent them a gift, a state-of-the-art smart home system, cameras and sensors and controls for everything in the house. Garrett was delighted. Such generosity from his father-in-law. He never suspected that every feed went directly to Douglas's servers. The first time Douglas watched his daughter through the cameras, he nearly vomited. Meredith was gaunt, 10 pounds thinner than at the wedding. Her movements were nervous, jumpy. She flinched whenever Garrett entered a room. She looked like a prisoner in her own home. Douglas watched for weeks, building his archive, documenting everything. The verbal abuse, the psychological manipulation, the way Garrett controlled every aspect of her life. And Vivian. God, Vivian. The woman was a monster in Chanel. Douglas had never hated anyone the way he hated Vivian Whitmore. Sir, Marcus appeared in his office doorway. The pregnancy test. Douglas looked at the monitor. Meredith in the bathroom, holding a white stick, her hands shaking. She looked at the result. Her face crumpled, then smoothed, then crumpled again. Positive. Douglas closed his eyes, felt the weight of what was coming. Everything was about to get much, much worse. The pregnancy changed everything. Meredith had hoped a baby would soften Garrett, would remind him of the man he'd pretended to be when they first met. Instead, it made him worse. The restrictions started immediately. No walking upstairs alone, no driving at all, no leaving the property without supervision. For the baby's safety, Garrett said, his hand on her stomach, possessive, claiming. I'm pregnant, not disabled, Meredith protested weakly. Dr. Werner says bed rest might be needed. Garrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. We can't take any chances with a Whitmore heir. Meredith hadn't seen Dr. Werner, hadn't talked to any doctor. Garrett handled all the appointments, reported back what he wanted her to know. She was growing a child inside her body and had no control over her own medical care. Vivian's reaction to the pregnancy was pure calculation. A Whitmore heir. She'd clasped her hands together. Finally. Not congratulations, not joy for her son's happiness, just satisfaction at securing the next generation. If it's a boy, Vivian continued, we'll need to discuss the trust arrangements. We don't know the gender yet, Meredith said. We'll know soon enough. Vivian's smile was hungry, and then we can plan properly. The ultrasound appointment was the first time Meredith saw Dr. Caroline Marsh. Garrett had reluctantly allowed her to switch from Dr. Werner after Meredith complained about never meeting the doctor treating her. Dr. Marsh was different, sharp eyes, warm hands, the kind of physician who actually looked at her patients. Let's see this little one, Dr. Marsh said, spreading gel on Meredith's belly. The image appeared on the screen, a tiny form, curled and perfect. There's the heartbeat, Dr. Marsh pointed, strong and steady. Meredith felt tears streaming down her face. Her baby, her daughter. She knew it was a girl somehow, felt it in her bones. Can we know the gender? Garrett asked. If you'd like. Dr. Marsh moved the wand. Yes, it's a girl. Something flickered across Garrett's face. Disappointment, quickly masked. Wonderful, he said. Of course we'll love her. Maybe next time a boy, Vivian said from her seat in the corner. Meredith didn't respond. She was too busy looking at her daughter, the only pure thing in her life. After the ultrasound, Dr. Marsh asked to speak with Meredith privately. Just some routine questions, she said. Standard practice. Garrett hesitated. Vivian started to object. Hospital policy, Dr. Marsh's voice was firm. A few minutes. They stepped out, reluctantly. Butter Marsh turned to Meredith. Her expression had changed, concerned now, serious. I noticed some things during the exam, she said. Your blood pressure is elevated. You've lost weight when you should be gaining. I've been stressed. Meredith couldn't meet her eyes. Stressed how? Silence. The question hung in the air. Meredith, Dr. Marsh's voice softened. Is everything okay at home? The words were so simple, so direct. No one had asked Meredith that question in months. She wanted to say no, wanted to pour out everything. The isolation, the control, the fear that grew a little bigger every day. But Garrett was right outside, and Vivian, and the walls had ears. Fine, Meredith forced a smile. Everything's fine. Dr. Marsh studied her for a long moment. Then she took a business card from her pocket and pressed it into Meredith's palm. If anything changes, day or night. Her eyes held Meredith's. You call me. Meredith tucked the card into her pocket. Hidden, secret, a tiny act of rebellion. Douglas watched the ultrasound appointment through the camera in Meredith's coat. He'd sewn it in himself, a fiber optic lens so small it was invisible, just in case she ever left the house. He saw Dr. Marsh hand over the card, saw Meredith hide it, a spark of hope. His daughter was still in there, still fighting, but she needed help. More help than a business card could provide. Douglas pulled up the financial records he'd been tracking, the Whitmore family accounts, the trusts, the holdings. What he found made his blood run cold. The Whitmore shipping empire was hemorrhaging money, had been for years. Bad investments, declining markets, Owen Whitmore's gambling debts. They were nearly bankrupt, but they weren't behaving like bankrupt people. The mansion, the cars, Vivian's jewelry. Where was the money coming from? Douglas dug deeper, found the transfers, small amounts at first, then larger. From an account he recognized, Meredith's trust, the $200 million her mother had left her. They were stealing from his dead wife's legacy to fund their lifestyle. Douglas's hands shook as he closed the laptop. They weren't just abusing his daughter. They were robbing her. Marcus, Douglas's voice was barely controlled. Sir, I need documentation on the financial transfers. Everything, every cent they've taken. Already compiling it, sir. And the lawyers, I want a meeting tomorrow. What's the play? Douglas looked at the monitors. Meredith in the nursery, touching the walls she'd painted soft pink, dreaming of the daughter she might never get to raise. We wait, Douglas said. We build the case, and when we move, we destroy them. How long? Douglas's jaw tightened. However long it takes. Meredith found the financial statements by accident, looking for stamps in Garrett's desk, a drawer she'd never open, papers she was never meant to see. Her mother's trust, nearly emptied. $200 million. The money her mother had worked her whole life to build. The money meant to secure Meredith's future. Gone. Meredith confronted Garrett that night, the first time she'd challenged him in months. Where's my money? Her voice shook but didn't break. Garrett's mask slipped, just for a moment. The contempt behind it was terrifying. Your money? He laughed. That money belongs to this family. It was my mother's. She left it to me. And you married into the Whitmore family. What's yours is ours. He stepped closer. That's how marriage works, sweetheart. That's theft. I'll call my father. I'll call a lawyer. With what phone? Garrett's smile was cold. In what car? Tell me, Meredith, how exactly will you do anything without my permission? She had no answer. She had nothing. I'll leave. The words came out small, desperate. With what money? Carrying whose baby? Garrett laughed again. My baby, half Whitmore. And in this state, fathers have rights. He stepped closer, his breath hot on her face. You want a custody battle? My mother knows every judge in this county, every lawyer worth hiring. His voice dropped to a whisper. You'd lose the baby, Meredith. You'd lose everything. Meredith's hand moved to her stomach, protective, terrified. Go back to sleep, Garrett said, his voice warm again, normal. You're tired. You're not thinking clearly. He walked away, left her standing in the doorway, trembling. Meredith stood there for a long time, processing. Then she went to the nursery, the room she'd decorated with such hope. Pink walls, paper butterflies on a mobile she'd made herself. She sat in the rocking chair, counted the butterflies. 7. 7 chances. 7 wings that still worked. "I'll find a way out," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "I promise. Mama will find a way." Douglas assembled his team in a secure conference room. No phones, no recording devices. Complete privacy. Patricia Holbrook sat at the head of the table. Family attorney, 64 jury trials, 47 wins. She had silver hair and steel eyes and absolutely no patience for nonsense. "Show me what you have," she said. Douglas laid out the evidence: financial records, bank transfers, forged signatures. "They've taken approximately $180 million from the trust over 18 months, and he said small amounts at first, then larger as they got bolder." Patricia studied the documents. Her expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened slightly. "The signatures on the transfer authorizations," she said. "Are they Meredith's?" "Forged or coerced. My forensic accountant confirmed the handwriting analysis." "And the surveillance footage?" Douglas hesitated. "There's a lot. I can show you the highlights." He queued up the video. Vivian's daily criticisms, Garrett's cold manipulation, the slow dismantling of Meredith's identity. Patricia watched in silence. When the screen went dark, she sat back. "You could have gone to the police months ago," she said. "Financial fraud of this magnitude. They'd have had grounds for an investigation. And Meredith would have been caught in the middle." Douglas shook his head. "Garrett would have painted her as unstable, complicit. He'd have gotten lawyers to delay everything. By the time charges stuck, the money would be gone and my daughter would be destroyed. So instead you watched. I documented." Douglas's voice was hard. "Every moment, every word, building a case so airtight that no lawyer could crack it." Patricia nodded slowly. "And the pregnancy complicates things." "It does. In Connecticut, fathers have significant custody rights. If we move against Garrett now, he could claim parental alienation. Tie everything up in family court for years." "I know. So what's your plan?" Douglas looked at Marcus, who stood by the door, silent, ready. "We wait," Douglas said. "We keep documenting, and we wait for them to do something that proves they're a danger to the child. That could take—" "I know what it could take." Douglas's voice cracked, just slightly. "I'm watching my daughter suffer every day, but if I move too soon, she loses her baby. She loses everything." He paused. "So we wait." Patricia studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "When you're ready to move, I'll be ready." The weeks crawled by. December arrived. The cold deepened. Meredith was 8 months pregnant now. Her belly heavy, her movements slow. The restrictions had tightened further. No leaving her bedroom without permission. No phone calls, no visitors. She was a prisoner in a gilded cage. "You need fresh air," Garrett said one morning, his voice dripping with false concern. "The doctor says you're depressed." Meredith hadn't seen any doctor, hadn't left the property in weeks. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You're not fine. You're barely eating. You're sleeping all day." Garrett shook his head sadly. "I'm worried about you, baby." The gaslighting was constant now. Every complaint she made turned back on her. Every observation twisted into evidence of her instability. "Maybe we should consider medication," Garrett said, "for the depression." "I'm not depressed." "The doctor thinks otherwise." "I haven't seen a doctor." Garrett's eyes went cold, just for a flash, then warm again. "Of course you have, baby. Remember last week? You're getting confused." He touched her face, gentle, patronizing. "That's another symptom. The doctor warned me about this." Meredith said nothing. What was there to say? She'd learned that arguing only made things worse, that defending herself gave them ammunition, that the only way to survive was to go quiet, go small, disappear. She'd learned to become invisible. The bathroom incident happened on December 20th. Meredith had mentioned the broken water heater, the one in the main bathroom, cold showers for a week now. "The plumber can't come until after Christmas," Vivian said, not even looking up from her magazine. "I'm 8 months pregnant. I can barely walk. The cold isn't good for the baby." "Then perhaps you could shower at the gym." "What gym? I'm not allowed to leave the house." Vivian's smile was pure cruelty. Then I suppose you'll have to tolerate the cold. We all make sacrifices. That night, Meredith used the bathroom at 2 a.m. Nausea from the pregnancy driving her from bed. She heard the click, too late, the door locking from outside. Garrett? She pounded on the wood. Garrett, I'm locked in. His voice came through muffled, amused. Mother thought you might try to embarrass us in front of the party guests tomorrow. Consider it a precaution. I'm pregnant. I need water. You need to learn your place. Footsteps walking away. Meredith pounded until her hands were raw, screamed until her voice gave out. No one came. 4 hours. Cold tiles. No water. The cramping started in hour 2. Meredith curled on the bathroom floor, her hands on her belly, talking to her daughter. Stay with me. Please stay with me. The baby kicked weakly, fighting like her mother. When Vivian finally unlocked the door at 6 a.m. and she acted surprised. Oh dear, what a mix-up with the lock. You poor thing. Meredith couldn't respond. She was too weak, too cold, too broken. Garrett carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed at her forehead. Rest, baby. You've had a difficult night. Like he hadn't caused it. Like he hadn't locked her in and walked away. Meredith stared at the ceiling. Something had changed in her. Something had crystallized. She wasn't crazy. She'd never been crazy. They were trying to kill her. Maybe not obviously, maybe not quickly, but slowly, deliberately, destroying her piece by piece. She had to get out, whatever it took. Douglas watched the bathroom footage with shaking hands. 4 hours, his pregnant daughter locked on a cold floor, cramping, terrified. Sir, Marcus's voice was tight. That's child endangerment. We can move now. No. The word tore from Douglas's throat. Not yet. Sir, they'll say it was an accident, a malfunction. Look at Vivian's face when she opens the door. She's already rehearsing the story. Douglas forced himself to breathe. I need them to do something undeniable, something they can't explain away. And if they kill her first? Douglas closed his eyes, the question he had been asking himself for months. Then I kill them. His voice was flat, factual. But it won't come to that. I've positioned teams throughout the area, ambulance on standby. The moment I call, they move. What are you waiting for? Douglas looked at the frozen image on screen. Vivian's smile, Garrett's arms around Meredith like he was protecting her. Intent, Douglas said. Clear, recorded intent to harm the baby. Right now, a good lawyer could argue negligence, accident, misunderstanding. He paused. I need them to say out loud that they're trying to hurt my daughter. Then no lawyer on earth can save them. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. They both knew what Douglas was risking. They both knew the cost of waiting, but they also knew the cost of moving too soon. So they watched, and they waited. December 23rd dawned gray and bitter. 17 degrees with a wind chill that cut to the bone. Meredith woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Garrett's Christmas party, the annual Whitmore social event. 24 guests expected for cocktails and canapes. She hadn't been invited to attend. You're not presentable, Garrett had said the night before, his eyes sweeping over her swollen belly, her pale face, her tired eyes. They upstairs. Rest. Not a suggestion, an order. Meredith didn't argue. She'd learned that arguing only made things worse. She spent the day in her room, listening to the sounds of celebration below. Laughter and music and clinking glasses. A party in her own house that she wasn't allowed to attend. At some point, she fell asleep. Exhaustion claimed her despite the noise. She dreamed of her mother. Warm arms, soft voice, the lavender perfume that still lingered in memory. Wake up, baby girl. Her mother's voice, gentle but urgent. You need to wake up now. Meredith opened her eyes to darkness. The party sounds had faded. Something was wrong. Vivian stood in the doorway, silk robe, pearl earrings, her face contorted with rage. How dare you? The words dripped venom. How dare you call the police? Meredith struggled to sit up, her head foggy from sleep. What? We found the phone, the burner phone, the one you hid in the nursery. The phone, Joanna had sent it months ago, hidden in a baby blanket, emergency only. Meredith had never used it, had been too afraid, but someone had found it. I didn't call anyone. Meredith's voice shook. I swear I was asleep. Liar. Vivian's voice rose. After everything we've done for you, after everything we've sacrificed. Garrett appeared behind his mother. His face was calm. Too calm. Get up, he said. Garrett, please. I didn't do anything. I was asleep. Get up. Meredith struggled out of bed. Her pregnant belly made everything difficult. She was wearing only her nightgown, the silk one Vivian insisted on. It's cold, she said. Let me get a robe. No, Garrett grabbed her arm. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. You don't get comfort, not after what you tried to do. He dragged her from the room, down the hall, down the stairs. Please. Meredith stumbled. The baby, please be careful. Through the kitchen, past the refrigerator, humming in the darkness. Past the counter where she'd eaten her lonely meals. To the garage door. No, Meredith understood now. Garrett, no, please. He opened the door. The cold hit her like a wall, 17 degrees pouring through the opening. You want to make phone calls? Garrett's voice was ice. Make them out here. He shoved her forward. She stumbled, fell to her knees on the concrete. The door slammed behind her. The lock clicked. Meredith was alone in the dark, in the cold, in her silk nightgown, 8 months pregnant. Douglas saw it happen in real time. Garrett dragging Meredith through the house. The shove, the fall, the door closing. Get the team moving, Douglas said. His voice was calm, deadly calm. Sir, they're 20 minutes out. Then they need to hurry. Douglas leaned toward the monitor. And get me Vivian's statement, the one she made at the door. Marcus pulled up the audio, Vivian's voice clear as crystal. After everything we've done for you, after everything we've sacrificed. Not enough. Douglas shook his head. I need more. On the monitor, Meredith crawled toward the water heater, her only source of warmth. Keep recording, Douglas said, every second. The cold was a living thing. It crawled inside Meredith, nested in her chest, wrapped around her heart and squeezed. She pressed her back against the water heater, the metal barely warm. Not enough. Her hands moved to her belly. Under the silk, she felt her daughter kick. I know, Meredith whispered. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. Another kick, weaker this time. Stay with me. Please stay with me. I'll get us out. I promise. She didn't believe her own words, but she said them anyway, because that's what mothers do. Time lost meaning. The cold made everything slow, strange, distant. She thought about her father, his face at her wedding, the worry in his eyes that she'd dismissed as paranoia. I'm sorry, Dad. Her voice was barely audible now. I should have listened. She thought about her mother, the way she'd fought the cancer, never giving up, never giving in. Mama, help me. Please help me. The garage offered no answer. Just the wind, just the cold, just the darkness. 11:23 p.m. The garage door opened. Meredith barely registered it. She was too far gone, drifting somewhere between consciousness and something darker. Vivian stood in the doorway, light spilling around her like a halo. Still alive, I see. Her voice was conversational, almost friendly. Garrett was worried you might not last the night. Meredith tried to speak. Couldn't. The thing is, dear, Vivian stepped into the garage, her heels clicking on concrete. We're in a difficult position. Your father's money is running out. The trust is nearly empty, and Garrett's company needs capital. She stopped a few feet from Meredith, looking down at her like she was examining an insect. If something happened to you, a tragic accident, perhaps, the baby would inherit your remaining assets. As the father, Garrett would control those assets. Vivian smiled. And your father would be so distraught, he might not fight for custody. Not after losing both his wife and daughter. The words penetrated Meredith's fog. Understanding dawned. You're going to kill me. Her voice was a croak. Not kill, dear. That's so crude. Vivian crouched beside her mirror, close enough that Meredith could smell her perfume. Lavender. Sweet and poisonous. We're simply going to let nature take its course. The cold, the stress, your fragile mental state, the baby. We'll survive, probably, and if not, Vivian shrugged. Garrett is young. He can remarry, find someone more suitable. Meredith's hand moved to her stomach. Protective. Desperate. "You're a monster," she whispered. "I'm a mother." Vivian stood. "Protecting my son. Something you'll understand soon, if you survive the night." She turned and walked back to the door, paused at the threshold. "Sleep well, dear, if you can." The door closed, the lock clicked. Meredith was alone again. Douglas played the recording back. Once, twice, 3 times. "If something happened to you, a tragic accident, perhaps, the baby would inherit your remaining assets." He had it. The confession. Clear. Undeniable. "Sir," Marcus's voice was urgent. "Her vitals are dropping. The baby's heart rate is slowing." Douglas looked at the biometric feed from the coat camera. Meredith's body temperature. Her pulse. All declining. He picked up his phone. "Move, now, everything we planned." The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos, 3 SUVs leaving a staging point in Greenwich. A private ambulance following close behind. 2 journalists, one from the Times, one from cable news, alerted to a breaking story. Patricia Holbrook on standby, with a stack of restraining orders and arrest warrants. And Douglas Callahan, still watching the monitors. Still waiting. "ETA 12 minutes, sir." "Understood." Douglas's eyes never left the screen. "Tell them to hurry." Meredith heard the helicopters first. A distant thudding, growing closer. She thought she was dreaming. Then light flooded the garage. The big door rolling up. Not from inside the house. From outside. Men in tactical gear, flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Meredith Callahan?" A voice she didn't recognize. "We're here to help. Your father sent us." She couldn't respond, couldn't move. The cold had taken everything. Hands lifting her. Warm hands, careful hands, a stretcher, blankets, an oxygen mask. "Daddy?" The word came out without thought, a child's word. "He's coming, ma'am. He's right behind us." Everything blurred together. Voices shouting, equipment beeping, the ambulance doors closing. Then a face appeared above her. Weathered, familiar, eyes filled with tears he wasn't bothering to hide. "I'm here." Douglas's voice broke. "I'm here, baby girl. I've got you. I've always got you." Meredith felt his hand close around hers, warm, strong, safe. "Daddy," she whispered again. "Don't talk, just rest." He smoothed her hair back from her forehead, the way he'd done when she was small, when monsters lived in closets and could be chased away with a nightlight. "You're safe now. You're both safe." Meredith closed her eyes. For the first time in 18 months, she believed him. The estate was in chaos when Douglas arrived. Garrett stood on the front porch in his bathrobe, his face cycling between outrage and fear. Behind him, Vivian was already on the phone, calling lawyers, calling judges, calling anyone who might help. It wouldn't matter. Douglas walked past them like they didn't exist. "You can't just," Garrett started. "Sir." Marcus stepped between them, his hand resting casually on his belt. "I wouldn't." Douglas continued into the house, through the kitchen. To the garage door, he stood there for a long moment, looking at the concrete floor, the oil stains, the water heater his daughter had clung to for warmth. His hands shook, his jaw clenched. Something deep in his chest threatened to break. But not yet, not until the job was done. He turned and walked back outside, calm, controlled, deliberate. Patricia Holbrook was waiting. Behind her, 2 police officers and a man with a camera. "Garrett Whitmore," Patricia said. Her voice carried across the lawn. "You're being served with a temporary restraining order. You are to have no contact with Meredith Callahan Whitmore or the minor child currently in utero." "This is ridiculous." Garrett's voice was rising. "She's my wife. That's my baby." "Additionally," Patricia continued, "you're being served notice of criminal charges pending, financial fraud, theft by deception, child endangerment." "I haven't done anything. My lawyers will." "Vivian Whitmore." Patricia turned. "Same charges, plus conspiracy, and based on a recorded statement made earlier this evening, attempted murder." Vivian's face went white. "What recording?" Douglas spoke for the first time, his voice quiet, deadly. "Every camera in this house feeds to my servers. Every microphone, every sensor." He met Vivian's eyes. I've been watching for 18 months. I heard every word you said tonight, and so will a jury. Silence, complete and absolute. Then Garrett lunged, stupid, desperate. Marcus intercepted him before he'd taken 2 steps, had him face down on the ground in seconds. Assault on a witness? Patricia made a note. Add that to the list. The hospital was quiet. The private wing Douglas had arranged. Armed security at every entrance. Meredith lay in a bed, IV in her arm, monitors tracking her vitals and the baby's. Dr. Marsh stood at her bedside, relief evident on her face. You're lucky, she said. Another hour in that cold, and we'd be having a very different conversation. The baby? Meredith's voice was hoarse. Strong heartbeat. Moving well. Dr. Marsh smiled gently. She's a fighter, like her mother. Meredith's hand moved to her stomach. Under the blankets, she felt her daughter kick. We're okay, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Douglas entered quietly, not sure if his daughter was awake. She was. Her eyes found him immediately. Hey, kid. His voice cracked on the words. Hey, Dad. Hers cracked too. He crossed to the bed, sat in the chair beside it, took her hand. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Words seemed inadequate. You knew, Meredith said finally. This whole time, you knew what was happening. Yes. And you just watched. Douglas flinched. The accusation hit harder than a physical blow. I couldn't. He stopped. Started again. If I'd charged in without evidence, they would have called me the crazy billionaire. Called you unstable. Their lawyers would have tied everything up for years. You might have lost the baby. So you let me suffer. I let them document their own crimes. Douglas's voice broke. I let them prove, on video, with audio, exactly what kind of monsters they are. He squeezed her hand. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching you, every day, knowing what they were doing and having to wait. Meredith was silent. I'm sorry. The words were inadequate but necessary. I'm sorry I couldn't save you sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. You did protect me. Meredith's voice was soft. In the end, you came. I should have come sooner. Maybe. She squeezed his hand back. But if you had, they might have gotten away with it. The money, the abuse, everything. She paused. Now they won't. Douglas nodded slowly, understanding what his daughter was offering. Forgiveness he didn't deserve, but desperately needed. I love you, kid. I love you too, Dad. Joanna arrived the next morning, having driven through the night the moment Douglas called. She burst into the room like a force of nature, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God. She stopped at the bedside. Oh my God, Mary. Joe. Meredith's voice broke. Joanna pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of the IV, the monitors, the pregnant belly between them. I tried, Joanna said. I tried so many times to reach you. The texts came back wrong. The calls went to voicemail. I know. Meredith held her tighter. I know now. I should have done more. I should have. You did enough. Meredith pulled back, met her friend's eyes. You sent the phone, the burner phone. That's how they found out someone knew. That's what pushed them to finally act. And nearly got you killed. And gave my father the evidence he needed. Joanna was silent, processing. We're going to be okay, Meredith said. Eleanor and me, we're going to be okay. Eleanor, Meredith smiled, her first real smile in months. Eleanor Grace, my daughter. The media firestorm began that afternoon. Douglas had timed everything perfectly. The arrest footage, the ambulance leaving the estate, the press conference outside the hospital. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The surveillance footage spoke for itself. Vivian's confession played on every network. Her voice, her words, her plans for letting nature take its course. The Whitmore name was destroyed in 48 hours. Garrett was arrested at his lawyer's office. Perp walk cameras catching his bewildered expression. He still believed he could talk his way out. Vivian was arrested at the estate, dragged out in handcuffs while screaming about her rights, about who her friends were, about what this would cost everyone involved. No one cared. Owen Whitmore appeared 2 days later, not to defend his family, to negotiate his own separation from the scandal. I had no knowledge of my son's activities, he told reporters. I am cooperating fully with investigators. The Whitmore Shipping Company filed for bankruptcy the following week. The civil case moved quickly, too quickly for the Whitmore lawyers to mount a defense. The financial evidence was overwhelming. $180 million stolen, forged signatures, coerced transfers, a paper trail that led directly to Garrett and Vivian. The criminal case would take longer. Trials, appeals, the slow grind of justice. But the outcome was never in doubt. Patricia Holbrook sat with Meredith a week after the rescue, legal documents spread across the hospital bed. The divorce will be uncontested, Patricia said. Garrett's lawyers have already conceded. No custody claim, no visitation rights. And the money? The trust will be restored, interest and penalties, plus damages. Patricia almost smiled. The Whitmore estate is being liquidated to pay restitution. Whatever they have left will go to you. Meredith nodded slowly. It didn't feel like victory. It just felt like justice. There's one more thing. Patricia pulled out another document. Your father wants to establish a new trust for Eleanor. Protected, untouchable. He doesn't need to. He wants to. Patricia met her eyes. He watched you suffer for 18 months. Let him do this. Meredith took the document, read it through, everything designed to protect her daughter, to ensure Eleanor would never face what Meredith had faced. She signed without hesitation. 2 weeks after the rescue, Meredith went into labor. The hospital was ready, Dr. Marsh leading the team, Douglas in the waiting room, Joanna by Meredith's side. The contractions came hard and fast. 18 hours of labor, pain that eclipsed everything she'd experienced before. But different. This pain had purpose, had meaning. One more push, Dr. Marsh said. You're almost there. Meredith bore down, every muscle screaming, every nerve on fire, and then a cry, high and thin and perfect. She's here. Dr. Marsh's voice was warm with triumph. She's beautiful. They placed the baby on Meredith's chest. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair. Eleanor Grace Callahan, not Whitmore, never Whitmore. Meredith looked at her daughter, the weight of her, the warmth of her, the impossibility of her. Hi, she whispered. I'm your mama. Eleanor blinked, her eyes unfocused but somehow knowing. I'm going to tell you something, Meredith said, and I need you to remember it. Joanna leaned closer, tears streaming down her face. You are not what happens to you. Meredith touched her daughter's tiny fingers. You are what you choose after. Eleanor yawned, stretched, settled against her mother's heart, the first moment of their new life together. Douglas met his granddaughter that evening. He'd waited, wanting Meredith to have time, wanting to approach this moment correctly. He entered the room slowly, like he was approaching something sacred. Meredith looked up, smiled. Come meet her. Douglas crossed to the bed, looked down at the bundle in his daughter's arms. Eleanor was asleep, peaceful, oblivious to everything she'd already survived. She's perfect, Douglas said, his voice rough. Do you want to hold her? He hesitated. His hands had built an empire, had signed documents worth billions, had orchestrated the destruction of the Whitmore family. But they trembled now, afraid of this tiny person. Meredith placed Eleanor in his arms, adjusting his grip, showing him how to support the head. Douglas looked at his granddaughter, felt the weight of her, the trust implicit in her sleeping form. Something broke in him, something that had been clenched tight for 18 months. Tears rolled down his face. He didn't try to stop them. I'm sorry, he whispered. To Eleanor, to Meredith, to himself, I'm so sorry it took so long. Meredith reached out, touched his arm. You're here now, that's what matters. The trial happened in stages over the following months. Garrett first. The financial charges alone were enough for significant prison time. The child endangerment added years. He tried to plead down, tried to negotiate, tried every trick his remaining lawyers could devise. The surveillance footage destroyed every defense. 12 years, federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 8. When the verdict came down, Meredith wasn't in the courtroom. She was at home with Eleanor, reading her daughter a story about a caterpillar becoming butterfly. Joanna texted the news. Meredith read it, nodded once, went back to reading. She was done giving Garrett Whitmore space in her mind. Vivian's trial was longer, more complex. She tried to claim diminished capacity, tried to paint herself as a victim of her son's influence. The recorded confession destroyed that defense too. 8 years, state prison. Her social connections proved worthless against documented evidence of attempted murder. When they led her from the courtroom, she was still insisting there had been a mistake, still demanding to speak to someone in charge. No one was listening anymore. Owen Whitmore avoided prison by cooperating fully with investigators. He testified against his own son, provided financial records that sealed the case. He lived the rest of his days in a small apartment in Florida. The shipping empire gone, the family fortune seized, the Whitmore name synonymous with fraud and cruelty. Meredith never spoke to him, never acknowledged his existence. Some things couldn't be forgiven. The nonprofit expanded in the months after the trial. Meredith used part of her restored fortune to build a new wing, dedicated to helping women escape abusive relationships, not just shelter, legal assistance, financial counseling, career training, everything a woman needed to rebuild her life. She named it after her mother, the Sarah Callahan Center for Women's Recovery. The grand opening drew hundreds of supporters, media attention, community leaders. But Meredith's favorite part was quieter. The small office where women could sit across from trained counselors and tell their stories, where they could be believed, where they could start again. 18 months after the rescue, Meredith Callahan stood in front of her bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked bad. The opposite, actually. The gaunt cheeks had filled out. The dark circles under her eyes had faded. Her skin had color again. Warmth, life. But more than the physical changes, something had shifted behind her eyes. A steadiness that hadn't been there before. A quiet confidence that came from surviving the unsurvivable. She was 31 years old, a mother, a survivor. A woman who had crawled across a frozen garage floor and refused to die. And she was finally, impossibly happy. "Mama!" Eleanor's voice echoed from downstairs. "Mama, Grandpa's here!" Meredith smiled, touched her reflection once, a small acknowledgement of how far she'd come, and headed down to greet her father. The cottage was everything Meredith had never known she wanted. 3 acres of rolling Connecticut countryside, a white farmhouse with blue shutters, a wraparound porch where she drank her morning coffee and watched the sunrise. Nothing like the Whitmore mansion with its cold marble floors and colder occupants. Nothing like the prison she'd mistaken for a home. This place was warm, lived in, full of Eleanor's toys and Meredith's books and the smell of whatever she'd decided to cook for dinner. She'd chosen every piece of furniture herself, painted every wall, hung every picture. Such small things, such enormous freedoms. Douglas stood in the foyer, Eleanor already in his arms. The little girl was chattering about something, butterflies probably, her current obsession, and Douglas was listening with the kind of focused attention he'd once reserved for billion-dollar deals. "She's been waiting by the window for an hour," Meredith said, descending the stairs. "Grandpa promised to help me plant flowers," Eleanor announced, "for the butterflies to eat." "Butterflies don't eat flowers, sweetheart. They drink nectar." "That's what I said, butterfly juice," Douglas laughed. The sound still surprised Meredith sometimes. For most of her childhood, her father had been serious, driven, the weight of his empire pressing down on every interaction. Now he laughed freely, smiled easily, spent his weekends on his knees in the garden with a 3-year-old on. Eleanor had changed him. Or maybe she'd just given him permission to become who he'd always wanted to be. They spent the morning in the garden. Douglas had brought supplies, seedlings, soil, small gardening tools sized for Eleanor's hands. He'd clearly researched butterfly-friendly plants because the selection included milkweed, lavender, and coneflowers. "Butterflies need places to rest," he explained to Eleanor, showing her how to dig a small hole. "So we plant flowers close together, like a butterfly hotel." Do they pay rent? They pay in beauty. That's the best kind of rent. Meredith watched from the porch, coffee in hand. The scene painted itself in her memory. Her father in old jeans and a flannel shirt, dirt on his hands, teaching her daughter about growth and patience and care. This was what she'd wanted for Eleanor. Not wealth or status or the hollow prestige of a family name. Just love. Simple. Unconditional. Present. You're staring, Douglas called out. I'm appreciating. Same thing. He smiled at her. That smile still held shadows. She knew he carried guilt about the 18 months of watching. But the shadows were fading. They were both learning to forgive. Him for waiting, her for not seeing sooner. Some wounds took time to heal, but they were healing. Lunch was sandwiches on the porch. Eleanor's favorite, peanut butter and banana, cut into butterfly shapes with a cookie cutter Meredith had found online. I got a call from the foundation yesterday, Douglas said, watching Eleanor chase a real butterfly across the yard. They want to honor you at the annual gala. Honor me for what? For the center, for helping over 1,000 women in 18 months. He paused, for turning your pain into purpose. Meredith shook her head. I don't want to be honored. I just want to do the work. I know. That's exactly why you should be honored. She considered it, the idea of standing on a stage, accepting applause for surviving something no one should have to survive. Maybe, she said finally, if the money goes to the center, all of it, every dollar, then maybe. Douglas nodded. He knew better than to push. His daughter had spent 18 months being pushed. She needed space to make her own choices now. Even the small ones, especially the small ones. Eleanor's afternoon nap gave them time to talk. They sat in the living room, Douglas on the worn leather couch, Meredith in her favorite armchair by the window. Sunlight streamed through the curtains she'd chosen herself. How are you, really? Douglas asked. The question he asked every visit, the question that always meant more than the words. Good, actually good. Meredith smiled. I know I say that every time, but every time I mean it more. Nightmares? Less frequent. Dr. Sullivan says that's normal, the brain processing at its own pace. She'd been seeing a therapist weekly since the rescue, another freedom she'd claimed for herself. The right to heal, the right to talk, the right to not be okay sometimes. And Eleanor? Thriving, you see how she is. Meredith glanced toward the stairs. She has no memory of any of it. To her, this has always been home. That's a blessing. The biggest one. Silence settled between them. Comfortable. Easy. I still think about it, Douglas said quietly. Every day, watching you on those monitors, not being able to... Dad, Meredith leaned forward. We've talked about this. I know we have. He rubbed his face, but some guilt doesn't listen to reason. Meredith moved to sit beside him, took his hand like he'd taken hers in the ambulance. You saved my life, she said. You saved Eleanor's life. If you'd moved sooner, without the evidence, I know the logic. Then trust it. She squeezed his hand. I'm here. I'm whole. I'm happy. That's because of you. Douglas looked at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said. The woman you've become, the mother you are. I learned from the best. Meredith leaned her head on his shoulder. Both of you. Joanna arrived that evening, bursting through the door like a small hurricane. Where is my goddaughter? She demanded. Where is the tiny human who owns my heart? Eleanor came running from the playroom. Auntie Jo! Auntie Jo! The collision was spectacular, Joanna sweeping Eleanor into her arms, spinning her around, both of them giggling. I brought presents, Joanna announced. You always bring presents, Meredith said from the kitchen doorway. That's because I'm the best godmother in the world. It's basically my job. The presents were butterfly-themed, naturally. A stuffed monarch, a picture book about caterpillars, a set of wings Eleanor could wear and pretend to fly. You're going to turn my daughter into a butterfly fanatic, Meredith said. Too late, she's already there. Joanna grinned. I'm just supporting her interests. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Eleanor insisted on wearing her new wings to the table. Douglas had to cut her food because she refused to take them off. Joanna told stories about her work at the hospital that made everyone laugh. This was family, real family. Not the cold performance the Whitmores had demanded, not the isolation Garrett had engineered. Just people who loved each other, sharing a meal, enjoying being together. After dinner, Eleanor fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the excitement, wings still strapped to her back. Douglas carried her upstairs while Meredith and Joanna cleaned up. So, Joanna said, drying a plate, I have news. Good news? The best. Joanna held up her left hand. A ring sparkled on her finger. Daniel proposed. Meredith dropped the sponge. What? When? How did you not lead with this? I wanted to see your face, Joanna was beaming. Last night, he took me to that little Italian place we love, got down on one knee between the appetizers and the main course. Joe, Meredith grabbed her friend and hugged her hard. I'm so happy for you. I'm happy for me too. Joanna pulled back, eyes wet. I never thought, after everything with Marcus, I never thought I'd trust someone again. But you did. I did, because you showed me it was possible. Joanna took her hands. Watching you rebuild your life, Mary. Watching you find peace. It gave me hope that I could too. Meredith felt tears prick her own eyes. You gave me hope first. That phone you sent, the burner phone, you never gave up on me. Never, not for a second. They stood in the kitchen, holding hands, crying and laughing at the same time. Two women who had been through their own versions of hell and come out the other side. I want you to be my maid of honor, Joanna said. Obviously. And Eleanor is the flower girl. She'll lose her mind with excitement. Good. Joanna wiped her eyes. That's exactly what I want. That night, after everyone had gone home, Meredith sat on the porch. The stars were out in force. No city lights to dim them here. Just the vast sweep of the universe, indifferent and beautiful. Her phone buzzed. A text from Douglas. Thank you for today. I love you. She typed back. Love you too, Dad. Always. Then she set the phone aside and just breathed. The air smelled like the flowers they'd planted, like new growth, like possibility. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Broken, isolated, convinced she deserved the pain Garrett inflicted. That woman felt like a stranger now. Someone she'd known once but had outgrown. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more certain of her own worth. Not because the pain had been worth it. It hadn't. Nothing could make that suffering worthwhile, but because she'd chosen to transform it, to take the worst thing that ever happened to her and build something that helped others. That choice had saved her. Not the rescue, not the trial, not the money restored. The choice to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing she deserved better. That was what had set her free. The Sarah Callahan Center had started small. A single office in a converted Victorian. 2 staff members, a shoestring budget. Now, 18 months later, it had grown beyond Meredith's wildest dreams. 3 locations across Connecticut, a staff of 42, a 24-hour hotline, legal services, counseling, job training, housing assistance, everything a woman needed to escape and rebuild. Meredith didn't run the day-to-day operations anymore. She'd hired an executive director, a formidable woman named Grace Chen, who had escaped her own abusive marriage 20 years earlier. But she still came in twice a week, still sat in the small office on the first floor, still listened to women tell their stories. Today, a new client had been scheduled. Young, first-time caller to the hotline. Meredith reviewed the intake form. Jessica Martinez, 22, married for 2 years. 3 calls to the hotline before she'd agreed to come in. That was normal. It took most women multiple attempts before they were ready to take action. The fear was too great, the uncertainty too overwhelming. Meredith remembered that fear, remembered believing she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The door opened. A young woman stepped in. Jessica was thin, too thin. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. Her left arm hung at an angle that suggested it had been broken and not properly set. Hi, Meredith said, keeping her voice soft, unthreatening. I'm Meredith. Please sit down. Jessica perched on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt at any moment. I don't know if you can help me. The words came out rushed, rehearsed, like she'd practiced them 100 times. He says no one will believe me. He says I'm making it up. He says I'm crazy. Meredith leaned forward, met Jessica's eyes. You're not crazy, she said. You've never been crazy. Something flickered in Jessica's face. Hope, maybe? Or just the first crack in the wall of denial. How do you know? Because I've been exactly where you are. Meredith reached across the desk, took Jessica's trembling hand. My husband locked me in a garage in December. I was 8 months pregnant, 17 degrees outside. He left me there to die. Jessica's eyes widened. He told me no one would believe me, Meredith continued. He told me I was imagining things. He told me I was crazy. She paused. He was wrong about all of it. You got out? I got out. It took help. It took time. It took more courage than I knew I had. Meredith squeezed her hand. But I got out, and so will you. Jessica's composure cracked. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over. I'm so scared, she whispered. He knows people. He has money. He says if I try to leave, he'll make sure I never see my son again. How old is your son? 18 months. Meredith's heart clenched. Eleanor had been that age once. Small, vulnerable, dependent. We have lawyers, Meredith said. Good ones. Ones who specialize in exactly this situation. We have safe houses where you can stay while we figure out next steps. We have people who can help with just housing, everything you need. I don't have any money. He controls everything. You don't need money. Everything here is free. Meredith paused. We're funded by people who believe that no woman should have to stay in danger because she can't afford to leave. Jessica looked around the office, the comfortable furniture, the soft lighting, the tissues strategically placed within reach. Why, Bishwa, she asked, why do you do this, boss? Meredith thought about the garage floor, the cold seeping into her bones, the certainty that she was going to die. Because someone helped me when I needed it most, she said, and now I help others. That's how it works. We lift each other up. Jessica was quiet for a long moment, processing, deciding. Then she nodded. Okay, she said, tell me what to do. The intake process took 2 hours. Meredith walked Jessica through every option, every resource, every step of the journey ahead. By the end, they had a plan, a safe house, a lawyer, a temporary restraining order. It won't be easy, Meredith said as they wrapped up. There will be days when you want to give up, when it seems like too much. What do I do then? You call me. Meredith handed her a card. Day or night, anytime. I'll remind you why you left. Jessica took the card, held it like a lifeline. Thank you, she said, for believing me. Always. Meredith walked her to the door. That's what we do here. We believe. That evening, Meredith picked Eleanor up from the center's daycare. The little girl was covered in finger paint and absolutely delighted about it. I made you a picture, Mama. She held up a colorful blob. It's a butterfly. It's beautiful, sweetheart. It's for your office. So you have butterflies there too. Meredith felt her throat tighten. This child, this perfect, resilient, butterfly-obsessed child. I love it, she said. I'll hang it right where I can see it. They drove home as the sun set. Eleanor chattered about her day, the friends she'd played with, the songs they'd sung, the snacks they'd eaten. Normal? Wonderful? Exactly as childhood should be. At home, Meredith made dinner while Eleanor played. The rhythm of their evenings was established now. Meal, bath, story, bed. Simple routines that felt like miracles. After Eleanor was asleep, Meredith found herself in the nursery doorway, watching her daughter breathe. The butterflies on the ceiling caught the moonlight. 7 of them, just like the ones in the Whitmore nursery, but these were different. These were chosen, placed with love, not desperation. I'm going to tell you something, Meredith whispered. Something I'll tell you every day until you believe it. Eleanor stirred slightly, settled back into sleep. You are stronger than you know. You are braver than you feel. You are loved more than you can imagine. Meredith touched her daughter's cheek, and no matter what happens in your life, you will never, ever be alone. She stood there for a long time, just watching, just breathing, just being grateful. The phone rang as she was getting ready for bed. Douglas, his nightly check-in. Hey, Dad. Hey, kid, how was your day? Meredith smiled. Good, we had a new client at the center. Young woman, scared, but I think she's going to be okay. Because of you. Because of the whole team. I just happened to be the one in the room. That's not nothing. No, Meredith agreed. It's not. Silence, the comfortable kind. I've been thinking, Douglas said, about selling the company. Meredith's eyebrows rose. Really? I've been stepping back for a year now. Marcus can run things. He's been running things. Douglas paused. I want to spend whatever time I have left doing something that matters. With you. With Eleanor. Dad, you're 59. You have plenty of time. Maybe, but I've learned not to take it for granted. His voice softened. Life is short, Mary. Shorter than we think. I don't want to waste any more of it. Meredith felt tears prick her eyes. What would you do if you sold? Travel, maybe, or help you with the center, or just, he laughed, just be a grandfather. Full-time, professional butterfly planter. Eleanor would love that. I would love that too. Then do it. Meredith's voice was firm. Sell the company. Be happy. You've earned it. Another pause, longer this time. I love you, kid. I love you too, Dad. Meredith smiled into the darkness. Always. 3 years after the garage floor, Meredith received an unexpected letter. The envelope was plain, white, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. But the return address made her heart stutter. Federal Correctional Institution, Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. She stood in her kitchen, holding the letter like it might explode. Eleanor was at preschool. The house was quiet. Just Meredith and this piece of paper that had no business being in her life. For a long moment, she considered throwing it away. Unopened, unread, untouched. But something stopped her. Curiosity, maybe. Or the need for closure. Or just the knowledge that some things had to be faced, not avoided. She sat at the kitchen table, took a deep breath, opened the envelope. The handwriting was careful, precise. Nothing like the careless scrawl Garrett had used when they were married. Hurried signatures on documents. Quick notes left on the counter. This was deliberate, each letter formed with intention. Meredith, I know you have no reason to read this. You have every reason to throw it away, burn it, pretend it never arrived. But I'm writing anyway because some things need to be said, even if they're never heard. I've had 3 years to think about what I did, what we did. Sitting in a cell with nothing but time, you can't escape your own thoughts. You can't rationalize anymore. You can't blame anyone else. I blamed you for a while, told myself you'd pushed me to it, that you were difficult, demanding, impossible to please. The same lies I told you when we were married. But lies don't survive prison. They wither in the silence. The truth is simpler and uglier. I married you for money. I isolated you because I could. I hurt you because hurting you gave me power. There's no excuse for that. Not my mother's influence, though God knows she had her claws in deep. Not my family's financial troubles, though they were real. Not anything I can point to and say, this is why I became a monster. Some people are just capable of terrible things. I learned that about myself too late. I watched the footage during the trial, all of it. Every moment of surveillance your father gathered. I saw myself through those cameras. The coldness, the cruelty, the casual destruction of a person who had done nothing but love me. I didn't recognize that man, but I couldn't deny he was me. My mother died last year. Heart attack. Maybe you heard. She was in the prison infirmary when it happened. They say it was quick. I thought I would feel something. Relief maybe, or grief, but I felt nothing. Just emptiness. The same emptiness I felt since the day they locked me in here. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know better than that. What I did to you, what we planned, it can't be forgiven, shouldn't be forgiven. I'm asking for something smaller. Just for you to know that I understand now. That I see what I was, that somewhere inside this hollow shell that used to be a man, there's awareness of the damage I caused. You deserve better. You always deserve better. I hope you found it. Eleanor must be 3 now, maybe 4, depending on when this letter reaches you. I hope she's happy. I hope she never knows my name, never learns what her father tried to do to her mother. That's my one prayer, if someone like me is allowed to pray. That she grows up untouched by my sins, that she becomes everything I wasn't. I won't write again. This letter is goodbye. Whatever peace you've found, I hope it lasts. Whatever happiness you've built, I hope it grows. Whatever life you're living, I hope it's everything you dreamed. You deserve all of it, Garrett. Meredith read the letter twice, then a third time. She waited for emotions to hit. Rage, grief, satisfaction, something. But there was only a strange stillness, like watching a storm from very far away, knowing it could no longer touch you. She folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer, not hidden but not displayed. Some things needed to be acknowledged and then set aside. The anniversary of the rescue had become a quiet tradition. December 23rd, the day the helicopters came, the day her father's team had pulled her from the frozen garage floor. She didn't celebrate it exactly. Celebration felt wrong for something so painful. But she acknowledged it, marked it, remembered. This year, the third anniversary, she did something different. She drove to the old Whitmore estate. The GPS took her along familiar roads, past the coffee shop where she'd once felt free, past the library where she'd borrowed books she was never allowed to keep, past the grocery store where Garrett's driver had accompanied her on carefully supervised shopping trips. The estate itself had been sold 18 months ago. The Whitmore name erased from the mailbox, replaced by something simple. Peterson, Johnson. She couldn't remember. She parked at the gate, didn't try to enter, just sat in her car looking at the house that had been her prison. New curtains in the windows, different cars in the driveway. A child's bicycle propped against the porch. Another family lived there now. A normal family, probably. One that ate dinner together and laughed in the evenings and never locked anyone in the garage. Meredith wondered if they knew the history, if the real estate agent had disclosed it, if they'd moved in anyway, believing that a house was just walls and floors and windows. Maybe they were right. Maybe places could be redeemed. She closed her eyes, let the memories wash over her. The first time Garrett had raised his voice, the first time Vivian had criticized her cooking, the slow erosion of everything she'd believed about herself, the bathroom door locking from outside, the 4 hours on cold tiles, the garage, the cold, the certainty that she was going to die. And then, the helicopters, the lights, her father's face. She opened her eyes. The house was still there. Just a house. She was still here too. Not the woman who had crawled across that floor. Someone new, someone stronger. That woman had been broken, desperate, alone. This woman was whole, strong, surrounded by love. "Thank you," Meredith whispered to the house. Not for the suffering, never for that, but for what had come after, for the transformation she'd undergone, for the person she'd become. She started the car, pulled away from the gate. She never went back. Eleanor turned 4 on a sunny day in March. The party was small, family and a few friends from preschool. Butterfly decorations everywhere, a cake shaped like a monarch. Eleanor wore her butterfly wings all day, refused to take them off even for cake, got frosting on the delicate fabric and didn't care at all. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Meredith said as Eleanor faced the candles. The little girl closed her eyes tight, scrunched up her face in concentration, then blew with all her might. The candles flickered out. Everyone cheered. "What did you wish for?" Joanna asked. "I can't tell you. Then it won't come true." Eleanor looked scandalized by the suggestion. "Smart girl," Douglas said. "Some things should stay secret." He'd sold the company 2 months earlier. The announcement had made headlines. Tech billionaire steps down, focuses on family. The speculation had been endless. Health problems? Scandal? Secret project? None of the above. Just a grandfather who wanted to plant butterflies with his granddaughter. "Speech," Joanna called out. "The birthday girl has to make a speech." Eleanor stood on her chair with Meredith's steadying hands on her waist and surveyed her domain. "Thank you for coming to my party," she announced in her clearest 4-year-old voice. "I love butterflies. I love cake. I love my mama and my grandpa and my Auntie Joe and Daniel." She paused, thinking, "And I love everyone." The end. She sat down to thunderous applause. "That's my goddaughter," Joanna said, wiping her eyes. "That's my girl." The Sarah Callahan Center celebrated its 1,000th client that spring. 1,000 women, 1,000 stories, 1,000 lives rebuilt from the wreckage of abuse. The milestone felt both enormous and inadequate. Enormous because of what it represented. 1,000 women who had found the courage to leave, the resources to rebuild, the support to start again. Inadequate because there were so many more. Millions of women still trapped, still suffering, still believing they deserved the pain inflicted on them. The celebration was modest. Staff and volunteers gathered in the main lobby. Grace Chen, the executive director, gave a short speech about the work they did and why it mattered. Then it was Meredith's turn. She stood before the people who had made her vision real, the counselors and lawyers and social workers, the volunteers who answered phones at 2 a.m., the donors who made everything possible. I want to tell you about a woman I met 3 years ago, she began. She was 8 months pregnant. Her husband had just locked her in a garage. It was 17 degrees outside, and she was wearing nothing but a silk nightgown. The room was silent. Most of them knew her story, but hearing it never got easier. She crawled across the frozen floor. She pressed herself against a water heater for warmth. She talked to her unborn daughter, promising she'd find a way out. Meredith paused. She didn't know if she was going to survive the night. She looked around the room, saw tears on several faces. That woman was me, and I did survive because my father had spent 18 months building a case against my abusers, because he'd positioned rescue teams nearby, because he documented every moment of my abuse until he had evidence no lawyer could explain away. She took a breath. But not everyone has a billionaire father. Not everyone has rescue teams on standby. Most women who call our hotline have nothing but their own courage and whatever help we can provide. She gestured at the room. That's what you do, every day. You are the rescue team for women who have no one else. You are the evidence that someone believes them. You are the proof that escape is possible. She felt her voice wavering, but pressed on. 1,000 women have walked through our doors. 1,000 women have found safety, support, and a path forward. But I don't want to celebrate the number. I want to celebrate what it represents. She smiled through her tears. Hope, that's what you give. Every phone call you answer, every intake form you complete, every legal filing and counseling session and safe house placement. You give women hope that their lives can be different, better, free. She looked at her father, standing in the back of the room. He was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. My mother believed that people could come back from anything, Meredith said. She fought cancer with grace for 3 years. She never lost hope, even at the end. I named this center after her because I wanted her spirit to live on, her belief in human resilience, her faith that love was stronger than pain. She wiped her eyes. 1,000 women, 1,000 proofs that she was right. Meredith raised an imaginary glass. To Sarah, and to all of you, thank you. The applause was thunderous, but Meredith barely heard it. She was looking at her father, at the pride on his face, at the love that had never wavered, even when it had to watch in silence. They'd come so far, both of them, from the monitors to the rescue to this moment of celebration. The journey wasn't over. It would never be over. Not while women still suffered, still needed help, still deserved hope. But today, at least, they could celebrate how far they'd come. Summer arrived with long days and fireflies. Eleanor discovered a new obsession, catching the glowing insects in jars and watching them pulse light in the darkness. They're like butterflies, she said, but they have superpowers. What superpower do you want? Meredith asked, sitting on the back porch. Eleanor thought seriously. Flying and glowing, and never being scared of the dark. Those are good powers. What power do you want, Mama? Meredith considered the question. Once she would have said invisibility, the power to disappear, to escape without being seen. But that was before. I want the power to make people feel safe, she said, to take away fear. Eleanor nodded solemnly. That's a good power too. I think so. They watched the fireflies dance across the lawn, little sparks of light in the gathering darkness. Mama? Eleanor's voice was sleepy. Are you happy? The question was so simple, so enormous. Meredith thought about everything she'd lost. Her innocence, her trust, years of her life she'd never get back. She thought about everything she'd gained, her freedom, her purpose, this incredible child leaning against her shoulder. Yes, she said, I'm happy. Good, Eleanor yawned. I'm happy too. The news about Garrett came in September. A heart attack in the prison yard. No warning signs. Just sudden collapse and nothing the medical team could do. Meredith learned from her lawyer, not the news. Patricia called on a Tuesday morning, voice carefully neutral. "I thought you should hear it from me," she said. "Garrett Whitmore died yesterday, heart attack." Meredith sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd read his letter months ago. "Okay," she said. "Thank you for telling me. How do you feel?" Meredith searched herself for an answer, checked the places where anger used to live, where fear used to crouch, where love had once, impossibly, foolishly, tried to grow. Empty, all of it, not numb exactly, just complete. "I feel finished," she said finally, "like a book I finally closed." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's healthy," she said. "That's exactly what you should feel." She didn't tell Eleanor. There was no need. The little girl had no memory of Garrett, no understanding of the man who had fathered her and then tried to harm them both. To Eleanor, there was only Grandpa Douglas, only Auntie Jo and Daniel, only the endless parade of loving adults who had filled her life with safety and joy. That was how it should be. That was the gift Meredith had fought to give her. Joanna's wedding was in October, a perfect New England day with leaves blazing orange and red. Meredith stood at the altar as maid of honor. Eleanor scattered flower petals down the aisle, taking her responsibility with 4-year-old gravity. Daniel waited at the front, tears already streaming down his face as he watched his bride approach. And Joanna, radiant, glowing, more beautiful than Meredith had ever seen her, walked toward her future with steady steps and a joyful heart. The ceremony was simple, brief, the vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to be your safe harbor," Daniel said, "your calm in every storm, your partner in every adventure." "I promise to be your truth teller," Joanna replied, "your biggest supporter, your reason to come home." They kissed, everyone cheered. Eleanor demanded to know why adults cried at happy things. At the reception, Meredith gave a toast. "To Joe and Daniel," she said, raising her glass, "who proved that love is possible, that healing is real, that happy endings don't just happen in stories." She looked at her best friend, married now, glowing with happiness. "You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself," Meredith continued. "You never gave up, never let go, never stopped fighting for me even when I'd stopped fighting for myself." She felt tears threatening, but kept going. "That's what love is, not the grand gestures, the small ones, the phone you sent me, the messages you never stopped leaving. The absolute refusal to let me disappear." She raised her glass higher. "To love that shows up, that stays, that saves. May we all be lucky enough to find it." The room erupted in applause. Joanna was crying. Daniel was crying. Even Douglas, sitting at the family table with Eleanor on his lap, was wiping his eyes. Meredith drank the toast and let herself feel grateful. For friendship, for family, for second chances and new beginnings, for everything she had now that she'd once thought impossible. Eleanor started kindergarten the following fall. Meredith walked her to the door on the first day, knelt down for one last hug. "You're going to be amazing," she said. "I know you will. But what if the other kids don't like me? Then they're missing out on someone incredible." Eleanor considered this. "What if I don't like them?" Meredith laughed. "Then give them time. People can surprise you." "Did people ever surprise you, Mama?" Meredith thought about her father watching in silence, about Joanna sending a secret phone, about strangers who had become friends and enemies who had become nothing. "All the time," she said. "Some surprised me badly, but most surprised me good. I want to be a good surprise." "You already are, sweetheart." Meredith kissed her forehead. "You're the best surprise of my life." Eleanor hugged her tight, then pulled back, squared her shoulders, and marched through the kindergarten door. Meredith watched her go, this tiny warrior, this miracle she'd carried across a frozen floor, this reason she'd kept breathing when everything told her to stop. "Brave girl," she whispered. "My brave, beautiful girl." Walking back to her car, Meredith passed a young woman on a bench, late 20s maybe, nervous energy radiating from every pore, a folder clutched in white-knuckled hands. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The way survivors always seem to recognize each other. Are you okay? Meredith asked. The woman looked startled. What? Oh, yes, I'm just waiting. For what? A pause, the woman's eyes darted away, then back. My husband thinks I'm at the grocery store, she said quietly. But I'm actually, there's a place for women. I looked it up online. Meredith sat beside her, unhurried, gentle. The Sarah Callahan Center, she asked. The woman nodded. You know it? I do. Meredith smiled softly. I built it. The woman's eyes widened, then filled with tears. Everyone says I'm crazy, she whispered, that he's not that bad, that I should be grateful. You're not crazy. The words came out firm, certain. You've never been crazy. The woman stared at her, hungry for belief, desperate for validation. How do you know? Because I've been exactly where you are. Meredith reached into her purse, found a card, pressed it into the woman's hand. And there are people who can help. The woman looked at the card, at Meredith, back at the card. Did you get out? She asked. Really? Meredith thought about the garage floor, the cold, the certainty of death. She thought about Eleanor walking into kindergarten, about her father planting butterflies, about Joanna dancing at her wedding. Yes, she said, I got out, and so will you. The woman's shoulders shook. A sob escaped. I don't know how. That's okay. Meredith took her hand. You don't have to know how yet. You just have to take the first step. And you already took it. You're here. The woman nodded, wiped her eyes. Will you walk in with me? She asked. Meredith thought about her schedule, the meeting she had in an hour, the errands she'd planned for the afternoon. None of it mattered. Of course, she said. Let's go together. That night, after Eleanor was asleep, Meredith sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her laptop. For years, people had asked her to tell her story. Publishers, journalists, documentary filmmakers. She'd always said no. Too raw, too painful, too personal. But something had shifted. The woman on the bench, the look in her eyes when Meredith said, I got out. That look was worth more than privacy, more than protection, more than the careful walls she'd built around her pain. She opened a new document, stared at the blank page. Then she began to type. The cold was a living thing. It crawled inside me, nested in my chest, wrapped around my heart, and squeezed. The words came slowly at first, painful, each sentence dragging up memories she'd worked so hard to process. But as she wrote, something shifted. The pain was still there, but it wasn't paralyzing anymore. It was just true, part of her story, part of what had made her who she was. She wrote about the courtship, the warning signs she'd missed, the slow erosion of everything she believed about herself. She wrote about the isolation, the gaslighting, the way Garrett had convinced her she was crazy when she was the only sane person in the house. She wrote about the bathroom, the garage, the cold that had nearly killed her. And she wrote about the rescue, the recovery, the long road back to herself. She wrote until the sun came up, until Eleanor padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Mama, did you stay up all night? Meredith closed the laptop, lifted her daughter onto her lap. I was telling a story, she said. What kind of story? Meredith thought about the woman on the bench, about the 1,000 women who had walked through the center's doors, about all the women still trapped, still suffering, still waiting to be told they weren't crazy. A story about butterflies, she said, and how sometimes you have to go through the darkness to find your wings. Eleanor yawned, snuggled closer. Can you tell me? Someday, sweetheart. Meredith held her tight. When you're older, I'll tell you everything. Everything? Everything, the scary parts and the beautiful parts, the darkness and the light. She looked out the window. The sun was fully up now, another day beginning, another chance to choose who she wanted to be. You know what the most important part of the story is? She asked. Eleanor shook her head. The ending. Meredith kissed her daughter's hair. The ending is the most important part. Why? Because the ending isn't sad. The ending is happy. The ending is sitting in a kitchen with my favorite person in the world, watching the sun come up, knowing that everything is going to be okay. Eleanor smiled. That's a good ending. The best ending, Meredith agreed. Outside, a butterfly drifted past the window, orange and black, a monarch probably. Eleanor gasped, "Mama, look!" "I see it, sweetheart." They watched together as the butterfly circled once, twice, then flew toward the garden Douglas had helped plant, toward the milkweed, the lavender, the coneflowers, toward all the beauty they'd created together. The garage floor was cold, but Meredith wasn't there anymore. She was here, warm, safe, free, surrounded by butterflies and love and the daughter who had given her a reason to keep fighting. And finally, impossibly gloriously, home.